Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and hands-on learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. My name is Sylvan and I will be your host. Today we are back in Zurich West and on our way to the Techno Park. There we meet Melanie Gabriel. She is the co-founder of Expense Robot, a Swiss fintech startup that puts your expenses management on autopilot and makes it easier and more efficient with artificial intelligence. The startup closed a financing round of 1.7 million Swiss francs just before the Corona crisis. And we also launched a new collaboration. Today's episode was produced in cooperation with the ETH Entrepreneur Club. The student organization aims to inspire, educate, and empower the next generation of entrepreneurs. They hold more than 40 events every year, resulting in an impressive alumni list of successful startups. Together, we host a live Q&A session where today's guest Melanie answers your questions. To participate in next week's session, follow ETH Entrepreneur Club and Swisspreneur on social media. But now back to the Expense Robot office. When we entered the startup office in the Techno Park, we quickly realized that this is not a normal startup office. Dog Yuki greets us enthusiastically, and the big black unicorn on the wall underlines the ambitions of the team. We sit down on the sofa and the matching armchairs in the corner and start the interview. Before we get started with the episode, I would like to introduce you to SBB Startup. If you think that your company is a good fit for the Swiss Railways, get in touch with them or learn more about their startup programs at sbbstartup.com. Melanie, a very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We are in the Techno Park in Zurich, the hotspot of startups and entrepreneurship. And I would like to talk about your way, how you found your way into entrepreneurship. In 2012, you started your own company, your first company, Armoire Au Revoir. Can you tell us a bit more about what led you to start your own company in 2012?
Yes. So I was there with a friend and she had this very well-known problem of having a wardrobe full of clothes together with her three sisters. And she successfully sold it on Facebook. And we both, together with a third friend, found actually this would be a really great concept for an app, because there in an app you can have more the community feeling, you can have better user experience. Yes, and so the idea of Armoire Au Revoir was born. It was a flea market 2.0 available in German and French. This is also why this is the name of it. Yes, this was how it all started.
So basically, out of your own need, and you saw a market opportunity.
Exactly.
At the same time, you were also still involved in other projects, and I can imagine that this is quite a difficult balance act to find between your own startup and other projects and engagements that you have.
Exactly.
How did you manage that?
Yeah, so I guess that was already the first big learning from Armoire Au Revoir, because I had Armoire Au Revoir. I was already involved in Verona 3000, and I also did my bachelor at the University of Basel at this time. And I think, and I'm very much convinced, that you need to be committed 200% to something. And this is also why this project Armoire Au Revoir faded out after a while.
So that's the famous focus that gets quoted over and over again, right?
Exactly.
So maybe we can also talk about Verona 3000. It's a very interesting project. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about what you actually did there and how this sort of very ambitious project was born.
Yeah, sure. So it actually already started before Armoire Au Revoir. I was always interested in classical music, and I did an internship at Lucerne Festival. And there I met this young composer and his theater director friend, who was also very young at the time. And they had this crazy idea that they wanted to build a huge music theater without any institution behind, but really from scratch, with 100 teenagers from all over German-speaking Switzerland. And they really wanted to compose the music, do the play everything on their own, and they were looking for someone who would support this crazy idea from a business side. And this is how I joined them, and then in the end also led the whole project. And 3 years later, in 2014, we actually performed the whole play in front of 8,000 people, and also were nominated for a European Music Award, which was really great.
That's like, the highest success that you can get, I guess.
I think so, yeah.
And then still, you decided to leave also that project and then go back to the startup world, so to say. Why did you decide to go back to the startup world and not continue with the passion of music that you had?
So from the beginning, Verona 3000 was a project on time. So it was completely clear that this is just a matter of time. We will do that once. And so there was never a second version, although now they're planning a second one, but I'm not involved anymore. And at this time, I was speaking to many people, and I felt that I wanted to kind of get out of my comfort zone again and learn something about a new industry. And while I was talking to different people and friends, there was one, the deputy CTO of Dismo, who told me about this B2B company in Winterthur, who was at the time still a B2C company. Yeah, and they were looking for someone, and I applied, and there was a great match. And this is how I ended up there. And I worked there for almost 5 years, while I also did, at the beginning of these 5 years, I also did my master's at the University of St. Gallen.
So you always had like this thing on the side that also kept you busy.
Somehow, yeah, yeah.
And then at Dismo, you basically were head of marketing. That was sort of like your way back to the startup world. So you started in the startup world, had a detour or another project with the music, and then going back to the startup world. And then at a certain point, you decided to not be an employee, but becoming a co-founder and started your own company, Expense Robot.
Exactly.
Why did you say, now it's the time to start my own company and not just be part of a startup, which is also cool?
I always felt this kind of excitement also with Verona, and just to maybe make a short point to that.
Sure.
It is another industry, sure, it's not the tech industry, but at the same time, it had all the attributes of a startup. We had to convince investors, not investors, but foundations and institutions and sponsors and stakeholders to really invest in this idea. At the beginning, everyone was telling us, just do a theater play with a school, because this is never going to happen. So we had to come up with guerrilla tactics for marketing because our budget was kind of zero. We did a crowdfunding campaign. So all the things that normally startups do, we also had to do. So I feel in hindsight, it's not that different to what I'm doing today. But back to your questions about why did I change from Dismo to Expense Robot? I was so excited about the idea, but even more about the people. I've known Davis for quite a long time. I often go mountain climbing with him. And so since he had this idea, I knew about it. And when we found out that it would actually make very much sense to come with my background and my expertise, it was quite clear that this would be a perfect match. And I was excited to start my own thing and really shape something from 0 to 1.
Cool. And your team of co-founders, you are 5 co-founders. That's an unusual high number for a Swiss startup. Does that make things easier or more complicated?
Definitely easier, I would say, because we are very different. We have quite complementary skills. And from the beginning, we could really, from day one on, we could just do everything in our area. We could build up the team. The responsibilities were clear. But I guess also for the investors, they knew from day one in what they would invest in which team they would invest in. It also gives a kind of stability into it, because from the beginning you're complete, you're a strong team. You don't need to waste a lot of money and time to find this kind of fit with another senior person. I'm very convinced about this success factor.
But you also have to split the shares with more people, right?
That's true. But I guess that's just in the end, it's a win-win situation.
It makes sense because you're probably stronger together than
Exactly.
alone.
Yeah, and you also get further. I'm convinced.
Right. Let's also talk a bit about the market opportunity that you saw with Expense Robot. You founded the company in 2019. What did the market look like then? What sort of opportunity did you see that you could capture with a new startup?
So the opportunity, I think, was twofold. So on the one hand, there are still a lot of companies out there that don't have anything when it comes to expenses and company credit card. So they're doing everything manually. And we all know the pain with filling in Excel sheets and gluing some receipts on a paper and handing it and sending it somewhere. So we just saw the opportunity of really having this value proposition of saving time, money, but also increasing the employee satisfaction because people hate doing expenses. And so this was on the one hand, one thing. Also, we often see that we are kind of the first touch point where people have access to artificial intelligence in a practical way. So there was the first opportunity. But then also, we are not the first one who are doing an expense tool. But so there are some companies who already have one, but we just realized many of them are not happy with it because it's more a digitalization of expenses, but not really an automation.
So you would still have to take pictures
exactly.
and so on. Okay.
And it doesn't read out everything. You need to type in everything, and it takes it just kind of distributes the task from the employee to the manager and the finance team. And we at Expense Robot really go one step further because we're doing the whole automation of the expense and company credit card processes.
Nice. How do I have to imagine that? Because if you are not familiar with that process, that can be pretty difficult to understand. What's your unfair advantage about how do you automate the process? What was done manually before?
Normally in companies where they don't use our tool or an expense management system, they have receipts. Often you forget it somewhere. You have to glue it on a paper. You have to hand it in to the HR, to finance team. Then, your manager need to approve it and check every cafe latte that you took manually. And then this is not the end. Then if everything is complete, which is often not the case, but if it is complete, it goes then to the finance team. They need to read out, type it into an Excel again, and then somehow reimburse the employee while they export the whole thing into the ERP system. So it's just very tedious work. It's very repetitive and very frustrating for all the parties.
Yeah, and from a business perspective, I guess very inefficient.
Yes,
you waste a lot of time and resources on that.
Yeah, and then of course also a lot of money.
Absolutely.
That you could have spent on something else.
Absolutely.
And one point is also, it's not only that, you really get insight into your data. So what do people spend money on and all these things. So it's not only that we kind of relieve them from the pain, but we also put a lot of added value into it.
So then you might even see more potential where you can actually save more money as a company, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
When you start a company in the early days, usually you don't have any investors yet, you don't have any money, and therefore also face big challenges because we all know building a company is hard and difficult, right?
Yeah.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in the early days?
Yeah, it was definitely convincing the investors because, as I said, we are not the first expense tool on the market. And to kind of show our investors that we make it differently and to show them the difference between digitalization and automation was quite difficult. And at first they didn't really know why they should invest because there are many out there who do something similar in their eyes.
So it's difficult for them to really understand the details because it's still a pretty complex matter, I can imagine.
Yeah, on the one hand, but I guess it's more about the market opportunity because they said, well, there are already tools out there. So there's not really like a potential that you could scale and go big. At the same time, we were quite lucky that we could, from the start, work with some companies who were desperately looking for a solution like ours.
Oh, great.
And they gave a lot of inputs. They tested our prototype, and this also gave us the assurance that, they gave us the assurance that they would buy the tool, right. But also that the need is here. So we really saw and could kind of show that we are solving a real problem with our solution.
Were these like very well-known clients, like big corporates, for example, that built also trust towards the investors?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that for sure also helped to have big name clients on the map there.
Exactly. So we were we then went the other way around. So we didn't go with the investors first, but we were quite lucky to have a few well-known names at the beginning, which bought into it because it was easier to convince the finance people than the investors. And with these names, together with our team, we then convinced the investors of the untapped potential in Switzerland, but also abroad.
I think that's a very smart way of doing it, because then you bootstrap first, you show we can actually get revenue, and then you go to investors. That's a way better story than just asking for money up front.
Exactly, yeah.
How do you actually make that happen to win these first clients? Because if you don't have anything yet and you're like a young startup, this can be super tricky, right?
Yeah, I guess there it's again also with our diverse team. We have a big network, and especially Thomas and Philip, who were working as CFOs and were connected to a lot of finance people. Great. So they knew the hassle and they knew the people who were actually looking for a solution.
In the early days with 5 founders and also potential first employees, you also have some salaries to pay, and without investors, that can also be challenging, right? Yeah. How did you solve that? Was that also with the revenue that you closed, or did you do any other things that helped you get there?
Exactly. This was what we did. We had this few names of companies, and they paid upfront. Nice. Which helped then to cover the costs of those who are on our payroll.
Yeah, I really think that this is the best setup that you can choose to also not give away too much equity too early on, right? So then basically the next part is actually now you started with the first clients, you also got to the first investors. I would like to talk a bit more about these investments that you got. You closed the 1.7 million Swiss francs seed round just closely before Corona hit. So talking about good timing there, maybe can you walk us a bit through, how the whole fundraising process went and how you actually ended up celebrating the closed financing round one day before the stay-at-home ban was established?
Yeah. So when we talk about luck and good timing, yes, definitely. Good timing is everything, or makes a big part in the startup world. And of course, the financing round takes about 6 months. So it was not that this was just like poor luck, but I wouldn't negate this fact that just having the funding round, the founding party one day before lockdown is really something.
Which makes a good story for a podcast, by the way.
It makes a very good story, yes, indeed. Yeah, talking of Corona, of course, I'm so grateful. We are all are, because the financing round really gives us time, but also security. We are in the expense and travel industry. So this is an industry that was very heavily hit by Corona. Sure. And we also had this problem at the moment because we only hired 2 new salespeople, and they felt the impact. And there again, we were very happy to be a startup in Switzerland, because there is this option of Kurzarbeit, of short-term work, which helped a lot in order to not having the pain of letting go people, which we are very grateful for. Absolutely. And now we're also being very optimistic, because we also see that the Corona also has kind of an impact on companies, because they realize that, maybe we should do something when it comes to digitalizing financial operations. Yep. So yeah, we're looking positively to it and hope that now it goes back to normal.
So short time, you would say it's a challenge for your business, because investments get put on hold and so on. But long term, you see a bigger chance because companies get pushed more towards digitization.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to focus a bit more on the fundraising again, because there, really closing 1.7 million in the seed round is quite an achievement, I would
Yeah.
say. How do you actually do the negotiations that took part for 6 months? Did you like agree on specific milestones where you said, okay, this is where we want to be and this is where we have to go as a company in order to close the investment or to build trust? How did these negotiations and the 6 months go by, basically?
Of course, you define milestones, and we had a few milestones that we had to achieve. And I guess Lars afterwards can talk more about this. And yeah, it comes all down to showing the market traction, showing that there is a huge untapped potential, that where the investors see actually, yeah, this money really helps to scale up very fast and to bring this tool to the market, and not only in Switzerland but also beyond.
Was there anything else besides traction and the strong team that you have that, you know, helped the investors to really make the investment case?
What really helped, and of course it goes back to market traction, but what really helped is, of course, they talk to our clients.
Okay.
And these clients told them how they perceive the challenge, how we solved them their problems, and that helped massively. Just to have these calls with between our clients and our investors.
Great point. Did you actually set them in touch, or how did that happen?
Yeah, we weren't during the calls because otherwise it would be biased. Sure. But we of course introduced them so they could talk on their own. Yeah. Yeah.
And also in terms of revenue, did you feel that there's like a magic number of the revenue amount that you need to have, or a magic number of amount of clients that you need to close in order to get to the seed stage funding readiness, if I can call it that way?
I think it really depends the industry also. And so we only know it for our company and our setting. Right. So I wouldn't want to make a claim for everyone. So it's hard to tell.
So you also talked about the Corona effect, that, short time challenge, but long term, it's a big opportunity for you. One thing that also goes hand in hand there is basically hiring people, and also, how you actually work with your current employees. How do you manage this part if, the whole physical aspect is suddenly removed out of the equation?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there is not one answer, but I can give one example. We interviewed a designer, which we saw during the interview because this was before Corona. But then the first day, it was already during Corona. So it just the onboarding, the introducing him to the team, everything happened on Slack and on Google Hangout. So you need to come up with creative ideas and really make this person felt welcome. Right. And yeah, we tried that with introducing him and making sure everyone gets a chance to also talk to him. Of course, virtually, but camera helps. We do daily stand-ups where we catch up with them. We also do weekly happy hours. So these are all the little things that help. And I guess since we are a tech company and we are using digital tools on a daily basis, I would say that for us it was easier to make the switch to home office, because already now we are just working digitally.
Yeah, you just keep going, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think you also realized that, working on creative things like brainstorming, having like real sessions where you're physically in the same room, work on a whiteboard whatsoever, that this is super challenging to do virtually. Do you have any replacement or recommendation how to go about that and solve that issue? New startup idea.
New startup, yeah, go make it happen. I feel that you can never replace the moment of being in a room locked down and having stuff where you can really work on for a quite number of time. But there are, of course, options. We used, for example, Figma, or Sketch is another tool where we just put in all our brainstorming, where we screenshotted things and exchanged ideas. We had sessions where we discussed things. We worked a lot with different questions. What do you think could this be, and so on. But yeah, I didn't found the way of replacing that feeling to really be in a room. And I'm very much looking forward to go back to the office. But of course, you need to be creative even in those circumstances. And digital tools help to kind of still be able to brainstorm.
Absolutely. When talking about the digitization, it's also a likely scenario that, this current status will take on for keep us busy for a bit longer. Mm-hmm. What would you do then? You cannot replace it. You cannot get the same physical feeling done remotely. Would there be anything that you would change or adapt compared to the things that you already did right now? If this is really, staying there for longer than expected.
You kind of need to bring the whole creation thing into the digital even more. And for example, one tool that I really like is in Zoom, you can do like this breakout sessions where you have, for example, first you have a group of different people who can give inputs, and then you work on one question in different breakout sessions. And I guess this comes close to, okay, let's make a brainstorming session with the whole co-founders and the whole team, but then the designer and I go into a different room and take the inputs and work on them then there. So I think these are kind of ways how you have to recreate the situation and the feeling of being together and making magic happen.
Probably the closest you can get, right?
I think so, yeah.
Now you're also growing. I mean, you closed the seed financing of 1.7 million. Your team is growing pretty rapidly despite the corona times. How do you go about finding the right people, making sure that you hire the right people in the right place?
We spent a lot of time in finding and searching for the right people. So it was quite a priority for us. We had several interviews per day, and we're looking for cool people who are a great fit and a great addition to our team.
How do you actually test that, whether they are? Because that's always a $1 billion question, right?
Of course. I feel it helps when we are still a small team. So you can also allow that everyone gets a few minutes or half an hour with the person. Right. Can talk about random things, not only the job, and I guess that helps. But of course, you never know. It's only when you work together that you kind of get to know the person really well. Yeah, I mean, for us, we were talking about that before our recording, about the expenses, and that it might be not the super most exciting topic, and when people are looking for jobs, they might think, okay, what should I do with expenses? But it's actually, when you go a little bit deeper, people, like especially for sales people, it's a very attractive way to sell something, because the problem is something everyone knows. It's something that it's straightforward. The pitch is straightforward, and also the finance teams are really looking for a solution. So you can close deals very fast. But also for engineers, there at first it's like, what should I do with expenses? But if you look closer, like nobody out there has really solved this challenge of really extracting all the information from a receipt. And so when it comes to engineering, it's really a crossover of different disciplines of OCR and deep learning and cloud computing, which is quite a challenge and an exciting challenge for an engineer to solve.
So for me, that sounds like you are solving a real problem for them, which is amongst your top priorities. When thinking about that, many startups might start out and just think, oh yeah, what we're doing is like top priority for other people, but then down the road they have to realize, oh, it's actually not the case. Did you do it, like, besides obviously talking to clients, but before doing that, did you do like any testing, any research on that? Or was that really also, coming out of your own need with your CFO connections that you had there to really validate that problem? Because for me, it's sometimes super difficult to understand whether you really are in that spot or not.
As you said, we all knew the hassle, and we were all hating doing expenses. I sometimes waited for 6 months until I did it, because it was just like not on my list of priorities.
And then it gets worse and worse, right?
Exactly. Yeah, but I mean, since from the very beginning, we had clients and companies that on the one hand tested, but also paid. we saw that it's not just something, because sometimes people say, yeah, I would definitely buy it, but then they don't if it's on the market.
Yes.
And since we had them and they were already paying for the product, which I think makes difference, and then they really tell you whether they like your product or not if they put money on the table.
That's right.
I think, yeah, this was our way to go and be sure that this is a product that can be successful.
So I think that's cool. So you start out of your known frustration or problem, and then you see that people actually validate it by putting money on the table, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. One last point from the operational perspective that I would like to tackle is, now you're growing your company, you are 5 co-founders. How do you organize your team? How do you organize amongst your co-founders? What's your organization structure, despite the daily stand-ups that you have? But how do you stay in touch and ensure good communication now also with a growing team?
Of course, the stand-ups help. We also have management meetings where we just share with each other what is the biggest priority from this week, what is going on. Of course, now with Corona, we have that more often. And it's a lot of also between 2 people, and we get together and exchange ideas and problems or discuss. So I guess one thing is the structure, and it helps that we kind of cover all the areas that are needed for a successful setup of a company. That helps because the responsibilities are clear. It's not that I do something from Lars, and it's really clear who is responsible for that.
Maybe you can also quickly walk us through the different roles that you have amongst your team.
Yeah, sure. So Lars is the Chief Customer Officer. He's doing everything relating to sales. Then we have Philip, who is the CEO of the company. He was very much involved, of course, also with the raising the round and closing it. Then Davis, who actually had the idea of Expense Robot, who is our CTO. And then Thomas, who is doing the CFO role. So he's actually our target group. So we can also test stuff with him. Perfect. And then me, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer.
So now, besides your role as Chief Marketing Officer, you are also very active as a board member of the WeShape Tech initiative, where you are promoting and aspiring for greater diversity in tech, which I think is fantastic and very much needed also here in Switzerland, not only in the US. So can you tell us a bit more, why is this important to you? Why did you decide to get involved there?
So WeShape Tech, as you said, is a network who is dedicated to great diversity. And an important point there is that it's on purpose that we're not called Women Shape Tech, but We Shape Tech, because it's not only about genders, but it's also about age, socioeconomic backgrounds, and education. So this is really dear to our heart. And I'm a person who, I see also in the tech environment, there are not as many women, also female founders, as men. And of course, there are many reasons for that, and you could talk very long about why this is the case and what should change. But I like to be very proactive, and I felt that by investing my free time into an organization that pushes forward and gives people a stage and gives people tools that they can use to actually have success in the tech space. I guess that's my way of doing something against it, because I hate when you just say that everything is bad. I'd rather do something about it or leave it.
Absolutely, yeah. Saying bad stuff about something and not changing anything is the easy part.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's still striking that, out of the 5 co-founders at Expense Robot, you're the only woman. So why do you think that there are not more female founders out there?
That's an interesting question. So I think taking a step back, it's not, of course, not just a problem for the startup scene. I guess it's more striking when it comes to, we talk more about it in the startup scene, right? Because you would think or hope that startups who are thriving for innovation would know about the evidence, the research that shows that more diverse teams are outperforming homogeneous teams. So just to say, I guess it's also a problem in other areas, but in startup, it's more striking. There are many reasons and many also there's a lot of research about it. I think it has to do with socialization and also the lack of role models sometimes, especially for younger kids. If you only know doctors and entrepreneurs as a male version, it's hard to kind of think that this could actually be something for yourself. Right. Then I also think it's like unconscious biases. There is this really great example from, again, the music orchestra, where they also had the problem that they had almost zero female musicians. Mm-hmm. And then they introduced a curtain and they made auditions where the kind of the jury wouldn't see whether this was a man or a woman. Mm-hmm. And over the years, like suddenly they had up to 40% of women, which shows they really took the brightest people and not only the ones that look alike. And then I guess one point is also lack of imagination. What do I mean with that? When you look at the VC landscape, it's very male dominated, and you see it very well with the femtech industry. There you have a lot of female founders. And it's only since recently where they kind of have investors that see the opportunity. And yeah, I think it would also help to have more diverse investors who kind of can imagine what the problems are of the other part of the population.
Right. And what do we actually need to do in order to get there? I mean, maybe you creating a huge exit and then going on the other side and becoming a VC would be one option.
Yeah, that's certainly a nice option. I guess with when I was saying about smaller kids, there are great initiatives. Like one is the Educator Foundation. They are putting a lot of effort into making games with kindergarten kids in order to teach them like computational thinking. Cool. So this is one thing. Then when it comes to unconscious bias, there is, for example, this great recruiting tool called the Diversifier from Wittyworks. Mm-hmm. But there is also a whole book called What Works from Iris Bonnet. So for those who are interested in how to kind of change your organization, that's definitely a start. And then I guess it's really about role models and also about like myself as a female founder to really like go out there, talk about it and give other people the possibility to kind of exchange. Because I remember the time I did my bachelor thesis about female CEOs and C-level. Mm-hmm. And I still remember this feeling of, I mean, I didn't know them, so I just wrote them an email and was hoping that at least one replies. And there were many that replied and said, yeah, I make time for you. And just this had such an impact on myself to really see them thrive and see, wow, one day this could be me actually. And I mean, this is also what we do at WeShare Tech. We really like provide them a stage of female role models, but also men, because we need both. It's not just a female thing. Sure. And we do workshops, events, and we'll probably also launch a podcast where we put role models on stage. And I guess, it's the whole society that can benefit from a more diverse environment.
Absolutely. As you said, the research is super clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, you are also a role model. You're a female founder of a tech startup here in Switzerland. So what advice would you give to other female founders or potential female founders to be female founders?
Yeah. The first thing is definitely find a topic that you're super excited about and that you can imagine to spend a lot of time and years on it. So that's the first thing. Another thing that helped myself a lot is find your peers, because sometimes you feel like I'm the only person on this planet who has this problem or is insecure or doesn't know what to do next. And it really helps to exchange with other entrepreneurs and just talk to people, learn from them. That's really something. And it also helps to kind of have this trusted circle of advisors that, especially when you have contradicting feedback at the beginning, for example, of a startup, it helps to just know, because people know your values, how you are, and it helps to really kind of filter these feedbacks. yeah, I guess that's it. And I can only encourage the female and also the male potential founders out there, because it's really a privilege to tap into your full potential and have the possibility to shape the tomorrow.
Just do it.
Yeah, kind of.
Now, maybe also looking a bit into the future, with the 1.7 million on the bank of Expense Robot, what are your plans for the future? Like, where's your journey heading to?
We definitely use and used already the money for hiring great people. Sales is one example, customer success, but also a lot of engineers to really drive our software forward. And when it comes to our product, we have a lot of ideas and already a lot of features in store. And we have this vision of really building a software that covers the whole ecosystem of expenses. And yeah, this is definitely something we put all our passion to it. And then another point is definitely Switzerland is one country, but we are currently already looking into other places. And yeah, you will probably hear soon about it.
Awesome. Yeah, Switzerland is hopefully just the start, just the beginning.
Yeah.
Awesome. So before we close the episode, we have some rapid fire questions for you. Let's start with the first one, night or morning person?
I would say night and morning person, because as a startup person, you need to be both.
But then you just don't sleep anymore.
You have to sleep because it's helpful, but depending the tasks, it's good to be both.
Agree. Happiness or wealth?
Happiness.
Why do you choose happiness?
I mean, you can only say one word, so I had to choose one. I think also the reason why you are an entrepreneur is because it makes you excited to wake up in the morning and to really shape things and have impact. I relate that to happiness, and of course wealth is then hopefully the consequence out of it.
The result out of it, yeah. Female or male founder?
I would say more female founders, but definitely needs both.
Yeah, as you said before, diversity is key, so that makes sense. It's a mix. Black or gray?
Gray.
Why?
Because I never saw life or it's just things in general in black and white. I think that's where the magic lies, in the gray zones.
Probably it's only black and white back at the university, right?
Yeah.
Speed or patience?
Speed.
I mean, as a startup, that makes a lot of sense, I guess. Cool. So that was it for the questions. Is there anything else that you would like to add or that we have not talked about yet?
No, I'm thank you for having me, and it was a great pleasure to be here. And yeah, I'm excited to hear all the other stories from other female entrepreneurs.
Hopefully, yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was a pleasure talking to you and hearing the story of Expense Robot, and all the best for the future. And we look forward to hear, see, and read more about you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the content, we would be thrilled to receive your rating on Apple Podcasts. That way you not only support Swisspreneur, but also help other entrepreneurs discovering the show and finding more valuable information on how to run their businesses. Next week, we will already be back with an all-new episode of the Swisspreneur Show, so we hope to see you again then for a new episode.